guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be cooking with classics. As a lifelong fan of Pride and Prejudice, the movie, and then the miniseries, and even sometimes with zombies, it has been a somewhat unique experience to read the book that started it all. So today I'm going to be diving into, one, a general review of the book and comparing it to its adaptations and kind of seeing which story medium allows for the best telling. Two, why I think this story has resonated so much, i.e. why it's a classic, and maybe even touch on the nature of genre and what this book would be considered if it was written today. Which leads me into three, how the nature of writing has changed over time. And I'm gonna go ahead and spoil part of my review right now and say that I actually found Pride and Prejudice really hard to get into, and I am very glad that style has changed. And finally, four, kind of wrapping into that, what this book has taught me about writing, all while baking something inspired by the book. Inspired is a loose term. But that's okay because I'm going to be making blueberry lemon scones. I am so excited. Lemon, blueberry, blueberry, lemon, lemon. Why does the lemon come first? Lemon, blueberry scones. Okay. But that's okay because I'm going to be making lemon blueberry scones. Gotta put them back down now. It is something I have never made before, much like all of the other times I've done a Cooking with Classics episode. So here's my ingredient lineup. We're gonna see how this goes. It could be a disaster, but the recipe that I'm following, and I will not fault the recipe in case it is a disaster, but it will be linked down below. I had thought about making potatoes.
What a superbly featured room, and what excellent boiled potatoes. Many years since I've had such an exemplary vegetable.
But then I decided, nah. Also, shockingly, potatoes aren't mentioned in the book much. In fact, for the amount of time that they sit around just kind of talking and being in the presence of one another's company, Jane Austen does not really focus on the food, which if I were writing the book, that's what would have happened. But first up, like always, let me put some respect on Miss Austen's name. This is not her. On Miss Austen's name, let me put some respect. First up, she's credited by some as writing the first rom-com in Pride and Prejudice. Two, she published herself Sense and Sensibility, her first novel in print. That's right, an OG self-published author. I like to think she would be a hit on authortube. That being said, she had already sold another novel, Northanger Abbey, to a publisher, but they actually held on to it for almost a decade before they ever published it. Obviously, times have changed and things are different within the industry, but I just thought this tidbit was kind of interesting. Three, the spin-off of one of her Wikipedia pages, all about her adaptations, is so freaking long. It is one of the longest I've ever seen, and I will link it down below because it is a fascinating read. Her continued influence and reach are astounding, given it's like 2 centuries later. Not only have her novels given us more classic adaptations like the Pride and Prejudice movie and the miniseries, but they've also given us iconic classics such as Clueless. In fact, I could argue that Clueless was my first introduction, as it was an Emma retelling. The saddest part, though perhaps not surprising given the time period that she lived in, Jane Austen was actually not credited for her work when she was alive. It wasn't until she died that she was given the recognition, and it was her brother fighting to make that known. Let me get the bowl. Where's my bowl at? Too many bowls. Bowl. So I'm going to begin by mixing my dry ingredients. Let me bring you down to my level. There we go. Oh, look. Aesthetic on purpose. For sure. And speaking of beginnings, I genuinely think Pride and Prejudice has an iconic opening line. Iconic opening line. 2 cups of flour, that is what we need. There we go. Doot, 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 doot. All the sugar. Now a tablespoon of baking powder. That sounds like a lot of baking powder, but what do I know? Doop. Half a teaspoon of salt. Ooh, how satisfying. Oops, that's more than, I don't know if you can tell. Should I just like put some in my hand? There we go, there we go. Should I throw it over my shoulder? Salt bay it. All right, mixed together. I don't know that I actually think having an iconic opening line is necessary of a classic, like And Then There Were None didn't have an iconic opening line to me. But man, oh man, what a way to start. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Ooh, look at how beautiful it is now. Beautiful. Trying to clean up as I go. Clean up as you go, go, go. Don't need you, don't need you. No. What I so enjoy about this opening line, and actually maybe the first 7 to 10 pages, is that you so clearly know what you're going to be getting from this novel. Some books aren't immediately clear, but this one, you know. And I completely buy into the theory that Pride and Prejudice was one of the OG rom-coms. And I've made like a 180 on the term chick lit in the genre, but I love chick lit novels. I love rom-com movies. I can absolutely believe that Pride and Prejudice fits in those categories. But I'm curious what y'all think. Please comment down below. Let me know where you stand on that. I know that could be kind of a polarizing opinion, so I'm very curious. Moving on, I gotta get my stick of butter out. I put it in the freezer because it said it needed to be frozen. Ooh, frozen butter. Because that's something people ooh for. I'm back with a cutting board. So it says that we need, where's my knife? Ah, not prepared, not prepared. All right, so it says we need 1/3 of this. No, sorry, we need 3/4 of this. So that could be used for later. Ooh, more frozen butter, okay. Apparently we want little chunks of butter here, so I'm gonna do the best we can, but I've never said that cutting was my strong suit. So we're gonna see how this goes. Okay, I think this is the best I can do. So let me go back to that part about immediately knowing what you're getting from the story. Because on the very first page, we are introduced to Mr. Bennet, aka my favorite freaking character. In fact, he's the first name character. Wow, yeah, he's the first name character. It's in quotes, but whatever, he's the first name one. And it is such a treat to read his lines. He's the freaking sass master, okay? And you know that from the first page. But he's not just the sass master, he's also kind of like a bit of an asshole. And I feel like both the movie and the miniseries kind of glossed over him, made him a little bit more shiny than I found him to be in the book. More gently lovable, if you will. But there is one line, it's nearing the very end of the novel, and maybe that's why it's my favorite line of his, but I think it so encapsulates his character because so much has happened over the course of this novel, but Mr. Bennet remains freaking steady. He remains the same. What page is it on? Page 326. Let me find, I was already on it, my goodness. And I quote, "I admire all my 3 son-in-laws highly," said he. "Wickham perhaps is my favorite, but I think I shall like your husband quite as well as Jane's." Frickin' Mr. Bennet, okay? All right, so I'm supposed to take my butter and put it in my dry mixture. This is going to require me using my hands. I think I'm supposed to put chunks of butter in the flour. So we're gonna see, chunks at a time, and like spread them throughout the masterpiece. No! I'm losing butter. Oh my goodness, I hope I have done this right. Is this what it's supposed to look like? Duke, you want butter? Chunks of butter in my flour mixture. Okay, so I've just gone back to my recipe. Turns out you don't want the chunks. You want them to be tiny chunks, little chunks. So despite making a video about reading, apparently it is not my strong suit. But thankfully this is something I can fix because I have not moved on. So anything, okay, so like this chunk's a little bit too big. It needs to be half that size. Now I truly do believe that characters are where Pride and Prejudice shines. Like, I enjoy the commentary on the current social situation that Pride and Prejudice, the time period it's based in, but I think its longevity in media is because of those characters and all of their relationships. Like, you wouldn't appreciate Elizabeth as much were it not for Jane and Lydia and all of her sisters in the mix as well. And then Mr. friggin' Darcy. Mr. Darcy, who I did not think could get better than Colin Firth or Matthew McFadden, and somehow he's dreamier in the book? How? The relationship between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, I think, like in a lot of cases, has more depth in the novel just because novels have more time to work on those relationships in the ways that movies often can't. And to continue that, Darcy freaking adores Elizabeth from afar already on page 18. How many pages are there in this book? There are 334 pages in this book, and it's on page 18 that we, the reader, are already aware of Darcy's affection for her. This is something that I think the miniseries did a better job of conveying, but the movie, I love the movie. The movie definitely did not. Let's see, page 18. But no sooner had he made it clear to himself and his friends that she had hardly a good feature in her face than he began to find it was rendered uncommonly intelligent by the beautiful expression of her dark eyes. Blah, 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 blah. He was forced to acknowledge her figure to be light and pleasing, and in spite of his asserting that her manners were not those of the fashionable world, he was caught by their easy playfulness. Of this, she was perfectly unaware. So, okay. Again, Elizabeth knows none of this. I didn't know any of this based off of the movie. You kind of get a feeling, but it's certainly not as early on as the book conveys. I've never actually zested a lemon before, so this is gonna be fun. The recipe calls for a tablespoon of lemon zest. I don't know what a tablespoon of lemon zest looks like. So we're gonna do this on the napkin and then transfer it. Is this a bad idea? Should I just like, you know what, screw it. All right, if this is a mistake, we'll find out together. Is any of it coming off? None of it is coming off. How do you zest a lemon? It smells good, so some of it must be coming off. Maybe it'll just be more blueberry than lemon, and then I can call it a blueberry lemon scone. So I don't know that I would call that a tablespoon, but I do think you can see that this lemon got zested, okay? This lemon got zested. I know it kind of sounds like I'm ragging on the movie, but of the three, of the movie, the miniseries, and the book, the movie is actually still my favorite. I fully believe it's the best because, okay, hold on. I know it's sacrilege, just hear me out for a second. Maybe the asterisk there is best for me, but I know I would not have made it through this book without having enjoyed the movie already. I would not have bothered to put in the time reading this because honestly, it wasn't until what page was it? I think around like 76, 77, chapter 18 or so. You can see I dog-eared it. It wasn't until then that I was actually enjoying the reading experience. Up until that part, I was really having to force myself through it, and I was only doing that because I knew what a great reward I was going to have. And I think that kind of coincides with the build up of Mr. Wickham and me knowing his ultimate downfall and being excited to see that in the book form, which is a little bit different. That I really tuned in because the writing style in Pride and Prejudice, it is so unlike anything I've read before, and I didn't like it. Okay, I'm gonna distract you by dumping these blueberries into my mixture. Okay, let's do that. Yay. This is 1.5 cups of blueberries. I'm gonna mix that in. Look at all the blueberries and the lemon zest, nowhere to be found. Yay. Great. And I think my main problem with the writing style can be reduced down to the fact that there were pages on end, scenes on end, where I am being told something rather than shown it. And you can do this effectively. Like, I'm not the biggest stickler on show versus tell. Like, I'm not beating people over the head with a book because it told me something instead of showed me. No, like, but this book does it endlessly. That I honestly wanted to throw it at times for how boring it was making it before page 82 or whatever. What did I say? 78? 76. Whatever. Let me show you for an example. Page 25. Let me see. Just a whole paragraph of telling. Little did I know what I was about to experience. And this was, I'd already made that comment about her telling me things. Okay. She did at last extort from her father an acknowledgement that the horses were engaged. Jane was therefore obliged to go on horseback, and her mother attended her to the door with many tearful prognostics on a bad day. Her hopes were answered. Jane had not been gone long before it rained hard. Her sisters were uneasy for her, but her mother was delighted. The rain continued the whole evening without intermission. Jane certainly could not come back. Okay, look here. Na-na-na and na-na-na and then, and this because of this and then. That was one paragraph, but it felt like that for so much of the book. And here's the thing though, I did start enjoying myself. I mean, over 300 pages in this novel, and I thoroughly enjoyed everything after page 78, 77, 70, 82, 78, whatever, it doesn't matter. Because past that point, I was involved. I was sold on the story. More particularly, I was sold on the characters and what was going to happen to them. And to be honest, I don't know that I'll read this book again unless I skip those pages, because even just reading it the second time so that I could make this, I found it difficult, which is so upsetting because I did so enjoy so many aspects of the books and so many different plot points that the book had that the movie and even the miniseries lacked because time purposes. But the book has so many beautiful things, And I just had a hard time for a long time. And if this was a book written today, if this was not a classic, I would not have continued on. If I had not already known that I would like it from the movie and the miniseries, I probably would not have continued on. And I think it's very indicative that you don't find stories written like that today. I don't know if this is true of the style of the 1800s in general, but we've certainly moved past that kind of writing, which I find interesting because, I mean, that was 2 centuries ago. It'll be so cool to see what's happening in 2 more centuries. You know, what will writing look like then? I'm kind of curious if it'll look like Illuminae, but all books will look like Illuminae. I'm looking at the recipe again. I feel like I should attempt to grade more of this in there. So, okay. I have more thoughts on writing that this book just illuminated for me, but also lemon. Zest. Zest. Okay, and now I'm supposed to like make a little hole and pour my cream in there. Is that a hole? I mean, not really. Stop, the blueberries keep falling. Put them up on the side like that. Like that. Whatever, okay. All right, 1 cup of cream. Ooh, ah. Oh my gosh, there's so much cream. All the cream. All right. And then I'm supposed to just kind of slowly work this in together. They said exercise restraint, which if they knew me, why did I decide this was a good idea? Don't they know I'm filming a video? All right, now that things are like kind of successfully mixed together but not forced together, I'm going to flour this bowl. That's not what this is called. Flour this cutting board and then transfer it. Let's go get the flour. Put it up, honey, and to come back out. Okay, that is sugar. Yep, this is flour. All right, and then I want this to kind of come out in chunks. Yes, is this it? I think this is it. It's happening. Some of these poor little blueberries are just still by themselves, but I'm gonna fix that. What the hell is happening? Wow. So they said this would happen. I have like a fair mixture of like leftover flour, but what are you gonna do? And then I'm supposed to gently attempt to knead this into a rectangular shape. I have a feeling something is wrong, but you know what? I think that every time I bake, so I burst a blueberry. You know, that's fine. That's good. That's what we want, right? To burst the blueberries before we bake them. Chunks of this have not come together. Oh no, oh no. To be honest, I feel like I missed a step, but you know what? I have a thing. So, is this the worst I've ever done on one of these before? I think so. We'll find out. It'll probably still bake and be okay. Wow. Hold it together. Hold it. All right, now we're gonna set this to bake at 400. This is what they look like before they're baked. I'm only a little scared to see what they look like after they're baked. A lot scared. Now, while I sit next to the oven, waiting for it to finish preheating, I do want to talk about what all of that has taught me as a writer, because I think it's helped reinforce an idea I already thought to be true, which is that the writing, though we call ourselves writers, the writing is not the most crucial part. It's the storytelling aspect that's the most crucial part. The actual word choice used isn't always necessarily make or break. And for me, and one of the reasons that Pride and Prejudice still succeeds, even though it took me a long time to get into, is because of the characters and the characters that are driving the story. It all comes down to, do I care about the characters? Do I want them to succeed? Or in like the case of Mr. Wickham, do I want him to get his eventual comeuppance? But either way, the characters have to make me feel something, and I have to care enough about them to continue the story. Let me find the book. Where's the book? Ah, I moved it. And all of my panicking about these things. Oh, there it is. And when it comes down to it, I really care about the characters in this story. I should also say that these are American scones and not British ones, so maybe that's part of my problem. You know, I didn't pay the right respects to Pride and Prejudice. Or maybe I'm just not very good. That's probably it. And while I wait for my scones to cook, we're gonna watch Love Island. You know, we're really running the gambit here on British culture.
This summer, it's survival of the fittest.
actually look pretty good. So while I am waiting for these to cool, I feel like now is the perfect time for a segment I call, what did I call it? WTF is : I have a lot of interesting things left to Google from my time reading Pride and Prejudice. Like, what is Michaelmas? I've heard of the term before, I don't really know much about it, so that's a question. What's with all the coughing? Kitty coughs all the dang time. Never explained. Also, what's up with being tall? It is said so much throughout the novel, and not like men being tall, which I think in our culture is something that like we're used to saying or hearing that be a positive thing, but no, it's always like the woman was tall. Also, these dances take forever. Like, is that how much time they used to be? Like a half hour each dance? And then the interesting sign-offs for letters, they have like yours, etc., which I don't know what exactly that's supposed to mean. Is that like inclusive of all? Love, Kate. Yours, Kate. Truly, best wishes. Have a good weekend, Kate. Like, is that what that means? Oh, I'm so curious. That's actually pretty good. I'll get some blueberry in there. It's not bad. You want to try? Yeah, it's actually not that sweet. Would you like to also pose with the book? It's okay.
Yes, Pride and Prejudice. Did not read it. Saw the movie and the show and everything else about it. Oh, good.
Success! All right, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please comment down below and let me know your thoughts on Pride and Prejudice. If you have watched the movie, seen the miniseries, and read the book, which one was your favorite and why? Obviously, there were parts I wasn't able to cover in this review, like the Gardners, some of my favorite characters, the Gardners, and the relationship Lizzie had with Mrs. Gardner. Ugh. So I would love to hear any and all thoughts you had that I didn't cover as well. Let's discuss this story. And again, please also let me know if you would consider this kind of like the OG chick lit or rom-com story. I'm very curious. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon with a new video. Bye! I'm gonna eat more scone. Her continued in, what am I trying to say here? Okay, out of the way, my shot. It is a truth universally